I haven't walked away from anything, and inflation is my greatest concern because of how it's affected my state, people in my state, and all over this country.
I mean, Democrats are saying you sabotaged the Biden agenda. What do you say to that?
Well, you know what? I've been around for a long time. People say things sometimes they might not mean, and I don't take it personal.
Senator Joe Manchin dismissing criticism that he torpedoed President Biden's domestic agenda after he was criticized by several members in his party after he said he could not back the climate or tax provisions with inflation as high as it is right now. Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin was very frustrated with that, telling CNN, quote, "My major frustration is I think Joe should have made his position clearer a hell of a long time ago." He faulted Manchin for, quote, letting this thing drag out for 6 or 7 months of this year. To talk more about what is happening in this divide in the Democratic Party, joining us right now is the former senior advisor to Senator Manchin, Jonathan Kott, and Dr. Abdul El Sayed, a CNN contributor and Detroit's former health director. He also served on the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force on health care. Thank you both for joining us this morning. And Doctor, I'd like to start with you because you say that basically your view of this is that Democrats who are now upset with Manchin got played by him.
This is the second major legislation that we've seen Senator Joe Manchin tank in as many years. And if you look at the Biden agenda, if you look at all of the things that were included in Build Back Better, all of the things that would have made people in West Virginia feel a whole lot better given where we are with inflation, whether it's making sure that they're not paying arm and a leg for their kids' child care or putting money literally in the hands of parents. All of these things would have been good for people in West Virginia, but this is the second time we've seen Manchin buck on this, and the only people who seem to approve are Republicans in West Virginia. He's got a 69% approval rating. It's hard not to read this as him bucking the party to secure his political future in West Virginia.
Jonathan?
I've known Joe Manchin a long time. He doesn't really care about political parties. He does what he thinks is best for the people of West Virginia. He goes home every weekend. His phone, I don't know how his phone battery doesn't die by like 11 o'clock because he gets calls from 304 numbers all day long. He does what he thinks is best. He told me when I first started working for him, he said, buddy, if I can't go home and explain it, I can't vote for it. He's been concerned about inflation for a long time. He was one of the first people raising the concerns. I would point out, he didn't walk away. He has said this repeatedly. He said it on Friday on Hoppy Kercheval's show. He said it yesterday in the halls to Manu. He hasn't walked away. He's just concerned about inflation. The last inflation report number came out. It was higher than expected. He wants to see what the policy impacts would have on inflation. And he said, why don't we take a little bit of time, talk to some experts, see if we can get the next inflation report that comes out, I think, August 10th, and then let's go from there. But I'd also point out, we're on the verge of getting something historic done. These are things that Democrats have been trying to do for years. Also, we just passed the first major bipartisan gun legislation in probably 20 or 30 years. We should be celebrating those victories as Democrats.
And, Doctor, to that point, if just what Manchin has said he would support gets passed on negotiating drug prices, extending these health care subsidies and expanding them, that is still really significant. It would have an impact on a lot of Americans. But I think it seems like it's less because it was presented with that giant package that you're talking about that had so much included with elder care, child care, climate, all these tax provisions as well.
Yeah, look, I'm all for that, right? But imagine going to Thanksgiving dinner and you're expecting a turkey dinner and somebody serves you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Well, look, you still had dinner, but it wasn't what you were expecting. And when we look at where we are, given how far underwater President Biden is, a lot of that is because there has been a promise made. You think about the young people who turned out in droves. Record numbers of young people turned out in 2020 to unseat Donald Trump. Look at what is motivating them now. You look at the laggard response on the issue of abortion. You look at the preemptive declaring of victory on the gun rights issue. And you look at climate and this issue that young people are facing down on a horizon that's looking extra bleak right now. And it just doesn't look like much. It looks like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so, if we want young people to show up in 22, if we want them to show up in 24, we've got to deliver on the promises we've made. And right now there is one obstacle, and that is Joe Manchin.
Jonathan, what about the criticism from Dick Durbin that Senator Manchin left them hanging? I don't want to say walked away because I understand he says he doesn't walk away, but left them hanging on his own proposals. Couldn't he have told them 6 or 7 months ago that he wasn't going to be there?
I don't think he was saying he wasn't going to be there. He said he wanted to get it right rather than get it fast. He's been concerned about how inflation is rising, And he's looked at factors that have changed, and that's what he's doing. So what may have been true in the world 6 months ago isn't true today. Things have changed. He looks at those. He wants to see what's right and what's best to do right now. And I would also point out, Joe Manchin never promised anybody a turkey dinner, right? Like these were promises that progressives made in a campaign, in a primary, that they lost, and they continue to lose. And there's a reason they continue to lose seats, because they promise things that don't actually come to fruition. And it's very easy to campaign. It's very easy to go out and tweet. It's a lot harder to govern. Joe Manchin never promised anybody anything. He said he would do what was best for the people of West Virginia and what he thought was best for the country. And that's what he's continuing to do. And I do think Democrats should sit back, look at everything we've accomplished, some of the most historic things in the first 2 years of the Biden presidency, and get out there and talk about that stuff and not complain every day on Twitter about what they didn't get. They should be celebrating the big victories.
Doctor, what's your response?
You know, Jonathan, it is hard to govern when you have members of your own party that aren't willing to get with your own agenda. This is President Joe Biden's agenda. This is not Bernie Sanders' agenda. This is not AOC's agenda. This is Joe Biden's agenda. And the other Joe Manchin, is the reason that agenda seems to keep hitting a brick wall based out of West Virginia. The other point we have to make here is a lot of this is focused on the fact of who Joe Manchin is. Joe Manchin is a coal baron from the state of West Virginia. So much of the opposition on climate change reform, which, by the way, is the reason that we continue to run out of oil, why gas prices are so high, because we have not invested in renewable energy. A lot of that goes back to who this person is. So please stop apologizing for somebody who has put his own personal agenda ahead of the country's agenda, ahead of his party's agenda.
He doesn't put his own personal agenda ahead of anything. He's doing what he thinks is best for the people of his state, and that's what elected officials are supposed to do.
It seems like what's best for his back pocket, but we'll agree to disagree on that.
Well, having known him for a pretty long time, I know he doesn't care about that. He cares about the people.
Jonathan Kott, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, thank you both for joining us this morning to talk about that. Obviously, something Democrats will still be talking about on Capitol Hill for the next several weeks.